Hey guys, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I am Greg, here today to do the Alphabet Soup book tag. This was originated by Sean the Book Maniac, and he very kindly tagged me. I will link his video down below. You should check it out. It looks like a fun book tag. He may do one for every letter of the alphabet. We'll see. But for now, we're dealing with the letter A. Let's get to it. Prompt number 1. A is for author. A good book by an author whose first name or last name starts with the letter A. First names are easy, so bonus points for a surname and double bonus points for first and last name. Well, of course, just for the bonus points that are on at risk here, I want to go with Call Me By Your Name by Andre Osman, but I know Sean the Book Maniac doesn't really like this book, and I feel like I've talked about this book a lot on this channel, so I will be willing to forsake the double points and go with a book that is on my TBR, and instead I will talk about Kingsley Amis, because I still get some bonus points for the surname, and Lucky Jim, which is a book on my TBR. Now, Kathy James, who is the best bookseller I have ever known, and someone I had the privilege of working alongside for several years, told me a long time ago that this was a really great book and I would need to get around to reading it. The premise is that Jim Dixon had accidentally fallen into a job at one of Britain's new red brick universities. A moderately successful future in the history department beckons. As long as Jim can survive a madrigal singing weekend at Professor Welch's, deliver a lecture on Merry England, and resist Christine, the hopelessly desirable girlfriend of Welch's son, Bertrand. It is a classic comic novel on my TBR, and its author has a surname that begins with the letter A. So there you go. Prompt number 2. A is for, well, A. The last book you read with the article one-letter word A in the title. Now, I missed the part that they just had to have that in the title. I thought they had to start with that, so I'm just going to stick with it and pretend that's what it meant. And the only two books I've read this year that start with the letter A are A Place for Us and A Fine Balance, both of which happen to be my favorite books of the year so far. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. I will leave it up to you to decide. If I were to go a little further back in time, the next available one, it would be a different story. It was something I DNF'd last year, A Ladder to the Sky by John Boynes, although that is, I DNF'd it because it was due back at the library, but I feel like I should revisit that book because I've seen a lot of love for it on BookTube lately, and because I did love John Boynes' previous book before that, The Heart's Invisible Furies. Prompt number 3, A is for Angry, a book that pissed you off. I am going to talk about 2. Adam by Ariel Schrag, partly because it has A's in it, and Ian Fleming's The Spy Who Loved Me. Now, in Adam, the main character, Adam, is a repugnant, awful human being, dripping with entitlement. He pretends to be a female-to-male transgender so he can date a lesbian woman that he has the hots for. And the worst thing about this book is that it acts like his deception is ultimately no big deal. It's a big deal. Basically, Adam gets everything he wants without any forced introspection or any consequences for his reckless, irresponsible, and frankly, terrible behavior. That takes us to The Spy Who Loved Me. Now, Ian Fleming is a problematic writer for a bunch of different reasons, and this book is where it really kicked into overdrive for me. I read every James Bond book that Ian Fleming wrote. I don't know why, and I don't know why I stuck with it. But anyway, this is the one that really broke my soul. Why a reading? This book has the quote, "All women love semi-rape. They love to be taken. It was his sweet brutality against my bruised body that had made his act of love so piercingly wonderful." Jesus wept. Why? I'm calm now. Prompt number 4. A is for Awesome, a top read of recent years. I am going to go with A Manual for Cleaning Women by Lucia Berlin. Now, I love the writing style. I love the emotional tone that Berlin sustains throughout the entire collection of short stories in here. I love the sort of quiet desperation that she portrays. Plus, this collection has scuba sex in it. So take that, James Bond. Prompt number 5, A is for Aaah. Name a book whose title includes at least 3 A's, bonus points if it's more than 3. Well, A Manual for Cleaning Women has 4. So bonus points right there, but I feel like I just talked about this book, so it's kind of cheating to use it again. I was going to do a fun little thing where I just live searched for a book on my shelves that have it, but while I was taking out Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis, I saw this and realized The Master and Margarita has 5 A's, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do better than that, but yeah, count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 A's right there. It also happens to be a really great book. It is a spin on the stories of Faust and Pontius Pilate about a hot spring when the devil shows up in Moscow. Prompt number 6. A is for annoying. A character that drove you up the wall. Well, I could talk about Adam from the book Adam, except I already threw it across the room, and I'm going to leave it there to think about what it's done. So instead, let's talk about Celestial from the book An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I feel like the entire narrative of this book depends on Celestial being extremely passive-aggressive and refusing to make decisions or confront difficult situations head-on, and to me that was infuriating. Similar to a problem I had with this book, Colorless Tsukuru Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage by Haruki Murakami. The main character in this book, Tsukuru, is also wildly passive-aggressive. Somebody tried to comment at me once to say, well, that's just, part of his Asian heritage. But I feel like it's taken to an extreme that I don't understand, and which irritated me all throughout this book. Prompt number 7, A is for ambivalent. Name a book you are not sure how you feel about. Well, I am still very much turning over Dancer from the Dance by Andrew Holleran and Paying Guests by Sarah Waters in my head, which is why I have not done reviews of them still. But I'm going to go with Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin, because over a year after I read it, I'm still trying to figure out what it means. I think I like it, mostly because after all this time I'm still thinking about what it means. But I'm also not sure, so who knows. Okay, prompt number 8. A is for anticipation. A book, new release or not, that you are very much looking forward to reading. I feel like I've covered this one a fair amount on this channel recently, both from the mid-year book freakout tag and from some other videos that I've done where I talked about my Pulitzer Prize project and things like that. So I'm not going to talk about any books that I've already covered, but I will say that just the other day I was looking at Pulitzer Prize winners in depth to try to get a sense of what I'm in for, and I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole because a lot of the winners from the early to mid 1900s deal with the Civil War, which obviously was still fairly recent back then. And one of them really caught my eye. It is Andersonville by McKinley Cantor. It sounds fascinating. So basically, it has both real and fictional characters who are in the titular prison of Andersonville, which was a Confederate prisoner of war camp. I'm excited for this one because it sounds morbidly fascinating. Again, it's a real prison camp for Union soldiers, which is famous or infamous for its deplorable living conditions. I'm also anticipating this because I'm curious about how problematic the book is going to be from a modern perspective, if at all. Basically, it tells the story of the prisoners and the guards from multiple different points of view. So that should make it very well-rounded and kind of open-minded and explore all the different perspectives on it. But from what I'm seeing that describes the book online right now, it sounds like it is very skewed to be sympathetic toward the Confederates and not the Union soldiers. So I'm kind of curious about how that's going to turn out. For instance, Henry Weirs, who was the Confederate commandant of the prison, is traditionally viewed as a sort of villain, but in the book he's portrayed as a sympathetic character who has a war injury and is just hopelessly in over his head when it comes to running this prison camp. And a Union prisoner, on the other hand, is described as someone who ran a gang of thugs that stole from people and all that. So right away it seems like it's much more considerate toward the Confederate side of things. It will be interesting to see if that is actually the case in the book itself, or if it is a little more well-rounded. It could very well be that Cantor is deliberately messing with your expectations to get a sort of larger and more complex sense of morality. But I'm feeling very scrutinous about this book, and I'm eager to see how it works out. Prompt number 9. A is for Actually. A book you did not expect to like, but did. Well, this year, the answer to that question is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I've already talked about this book. So I want to talk about something different. And I'll go with Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. Now, in the early days, I was not a big fan of Anthony Bourdain's. He has this kind of intellectual frat boy persona that I just did not respond to. But when I first started dating my husband, he was working as a pastry chef in a restaurant, and I became fascinated by the idea of restaurant life. It has lots of different codes of honor and things about it that I find fascinating. So Kitchen Confidential seemed like a really great way to dive into that world, and it's actually one of my favorite books. I really enjoyed it. I appreciated the whole glimpse into the kitchen. I know not to order Eggs Benedict for brunch now, and if you want to know why, read Kitchen Confidential. And I did a total 180 on Anthony Bourdain after reading this book, which of course means I was devastated when he died of suicide last year. But I did not expect to like Kitchen Confidential just because I didn't think I liked him, and I ended up liking him because of this book. Prompt number 10. A is for affected. A character, book, or writer you feel is pretentious. Well, I have a lot of opinions that I could share here, but I'm going to go with probably somebody a lot of people could agree with. It's Jonathan Franzen, and specifically the corrections. Here's a fun fact. I have started 2 novels by Jonathan Franzen. I have yet to finish a single one. Not a big fan. I don't like his really prickly persona that he pushes across in the media. But here's another fun fact. This is actually a first edition of the corrections. I purchased this on September 11th because I was working in a mall in New Jersey, close to New York City at the time. And this book had just been released. And on 9/11, the store was closed. We didn't know when the store was going to be open again because malls were seen as potential targets for terrorist attacks back then. So we didn't know when we were going to be let back in the store. So I grabbed a copy of it before I could leave. And interestingly, the first edition has a printing error. If I can get the slip out of here. There it is. So basically, the text on pages 430 and 431 are reversed, so you should need to read page 431 before reading page 430, which is actually why I've kept this book, because I gave away my copy of Freedom a long time ago, but I've held on to this one because of that interesting little error in the printing. Prompt number 11. How's it going, eh? A book you liked by a Canadian writer or one you want to read. Well, I've only ever read The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and I feel like that book has been talked to death on BookTube and in general recently. I feel like I've also talked a lot about Miriam Toews on this channel. I've talked about Asiya Dugin a lot on this channel. So I'm going to go with Malcolm Gladwell. He is a nonfiction author that I love. I love to follow his work, even though I don't always agree with his conclusions, and I don't always agree. Some of his examples seem like reaches to me, and I think some of his books have sections that don't necessarily support his thesis, but I just think he's a really fascinating storyteller. I think the way he thinks is really interesting. So the book of his that I'm going to single out is Outliers, The Story of Success. That I would say is probably my favorite book of his that I've read so far. And also I would point out that Malcolm Gladwell has one of my favorite podcasts to listen to, which is called Revisionist History. I just adore it. Prompt number 12. A is for Anticlimactic, a book that you thought fizzled out at the end. Well, I don't like the twist at the end of Daisy Jones and the Six, even though I liked the book overall. But again, I feel like I've talked about this book a fair amount. So instead I'm going to go with The Other Americans by Leila Lalami. Because I had admired this book while I was reading it, because there was something in the plot that felt like it would have been a gimme if Leila Lalami had gone for it. And I admired the book for not going for that kind of a twist. And then in the end, it went for that twist. So I could not help but be really disappointed in the book. So there you go. It seems like the perfect answer. And that brings us to prompt number 13, which is A is for all the booktubers. Tag a swack of people. And by the way, I have never heard the word swack before. I'm intrigued. I'm going to look it up, possibly add it to my vocabulary, and see how that goes. But anyway, I'm going to take my usual cop-out and say, if you're watching this video, you are tagged. Feel free to do a video, and I would love to watch it and hear about some of the things that you would answer for these prompts. If you have also read any of these books and have opinions, if you want to argue with me about Jonathan Franzen or Ian Fleming, let me know. Let's fight about it. And I will be back again. Thank you for your time watching this video. As always, I really appreciate it. And until next time, happy reading.